Bad Day at Cat Rock is a pretty decent Tom and Jerry cartoon. This is a 1965 Tom and Jerry cartoon directed by Chuck Jones and Maurice Noble, and this takes place primarily on a building construction site, which means that there are different things that Tom and Jerry can interact with. It's not the most unique setting for a cartoon like this, but then there's a reason why it's done quite a bit, because it works quite well. And I think it did. We had some good backgrounds, some decent things in the foreground for them to interact with, and lots of places for Jerry to hide behind and Tom to, suddenly appear. And I think that worked quite well. I won't go into too much detail about any of the things that Tom tries to capture Jerry, or indeed things that Jerry does to get one over on Tom, because I don't want to spoil it. But there is one thing that I want to mention that I absolutely loved. So I guess that's a tiny spoiler. So to sum up before I spoil it, it's well animated, absolutely well animated, very kind of crisp, sharp lines, bright, bold colours. The colour palette was very effective for the location. The pacing of the narrative was, very good. It went from one thing to the next without feeling like anything was dragging itself or like it felt too repetitive. We had some pretty good background music, of course. One thing I did think was weird, and I don't know if this is just something I've never noticed before, but the title credits were happening when some of the animation was happening, and I don't think I've ever seen that in a Tom and Jerry cartoon, not even a Chuck Jones one. I mean, I could have just not paid full attention to it before, but it was something that stood out to me with watching this one. So I thought it was worth mentioning. It's a good cartoon. The pacing is good. The concept is, a classic setup for this kind of cartoon, and it works quite well. I certainly didn't mind it. So the bit that I loved, and this is a spoiler because I'm going to discuss something that happens, is when Tom loses his fur. And I loved it initially because Tom just standing there in his underwear was just a great sight and very well animated. And Jerry using it as a parachute was fabulous. And then Tom put his fur back on and his tail was on inside out. And I loved it. And it just reminded me of all the times I've put on, say, a jacket or a dressing gown and the hood's been on the inside. And it was that kind of sensation. And the way it was animated with just a little bump for his tail, I really loved it. I enjoyed it. I got a lot of humour out of that one. And then when he pulled the tail, what happened after he pulled the tail, yeah, it genuinely made me laugh out loud, and I really thoroughly enjoyed it. So, needless to say, this is one Tom and Jerry cartoon that I enjoyed more than expected, and is one that I definitely recommend.